everyone, and welcome to For Love and Money with the Lesbian Talk Show. I'm your host, Rae D. Magdon, and today we have an awesome guest who I'm very excited to chat with, Barbara Ann Wright, who really specializes in speculative fiction, science fiction, and fantasy in particular. So, as a lover of speculative fiction of all types, I'm so happy that you agreed to come on and talk to us today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It sounds awesome.
It's great to sit down and talk to you. Could you tell me just a little bit to start us off, what draws you to writing speculative fiction?
I really like the idea that in speculative fiction, anything can happen, that you can play with any kind of topic and that people will be more comfortable with it because it's a made-up world or made-up technology or something. I like the fact that I can have LGBTQ characters and make my society completely accepting of them because that's the world that I would like to live in. And no one has to suffer homophobia or anything like that, or even sexism. I like having my worlds just be places where nobody cares if anybody is a woman or anywhere on the LGBTQ spectrum. In fact, I like to think of it as everybody's on there somewhere, in my worlds at least.
I feel the same way about my writing. Everyone's a little bit queer.
Yeah.
So lots of people, for some reason or another, feel like speculative fiction isn't accessible to them. They feel like, I don't know, it's a man's thing, but there's a whole bunch of lesfic authors out there who write this stuff and who do it so well. So how do you market speculative fiction to those people? How do you convince people that this is a really good read?
It can be a little difficult. I think getting out there as much as possible and talking to people at conferences like GCLS or at science fiction and fantasy conferences and just speaking to people and saying, talking about your book and saying it's about people having adventures, so people who say they're not into science fiction or fantasy, they usually, they watched Lord of the Rings or they watched Star Wars, and you can say, it's just kind of like that. You don't have to worry about having a physics degree, or something. My stuff is not highly technical, so you can just read it and enjoy because it's really just about people having adventures together. It can be kind of a harder sell sometimes to straight audiences, or mostly the people at the sci-fi conventions. And what I found is a lot of them are afraid that if there are gay characters in a thing, that they're going to either suffer or die horribly, which is a thing, I guess, that happens all too often in media. And I have to reassure them, no, there's not going to be any spontaneously dead lesbians here. Everyone's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think lesfic is kind of a safe haven from the whole bury your gays trope because our casts just tend to be so overwhelmingly LGBTQ that, it doesn't play the same way as it might on a television show.
Right.
So, you have a new release coming out in December. Can we talk a little bit about that, what it's about? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and at this point in the story, the gods have all come down from this space satellite where they've been living, and they've been wreaking havoc on the planet. And this is the point when everything comes to a head, and the people on the planet finally decide they've had enough, and they want to deal with these fake gods for the last time.
So, how are you planning to market this series?
Oh, that is a tough one because this one has characters that run the whole LGBT gamut. It has, and they different ones have different romances. So it's got lesbian romances and gay romances and trans romances and all this stuff. It has a lot of points of view, and I think that scares off a lot of readers, especially if they're used to 2 or maybe 3 points of view in a book, especially in a romance. So it's tough to get them into this, and they're thinking, oh, it's too big, the world's too big, there's too many people. But I try and tell them that, just trust me. I won't just introduce somebody and then not remind you who they are again when they come back. So it's been a little hard to get people into it. However, people at sci-fi conventions seem to really like it. The people who are already used to that format seem to really get into it. It's just hard finding those people outside of conferences and outside of pride festivals.
So, how do you find them? What techniques have you used?
Well, interviews like this one are always good because then people can stumble across it. But I've done blog posts about it. I do my little book trailer videos with the Barbie dolls. And sometimes people will go and check it out after that. I just try to spread the word any way I can. I hand out a lot of cards and promo materials at conventions, really just trying to use my personality in order to draw people into my work.
So, you mentioned that this series might be a bit of a tough sell for some people. Do you think that the brand you've built with your other work, like the Barbara Ann Wright brand, would possibly convince people who might be a little wary to trust you and give this book a try?
I hope so. I mean, I have heard that I am funny, and I try to go to conferences and be funny, and I think that convinces a lot of people to try my work because they're hoping that it will be entertaining, and hilarious. And I tell them that I have written a comedy, even though all of my books, the rest of my books, I wouldn't say any of them are comedies. They all have, witty banter and incredibly sarcastic lesbians and things that I think, reflect who I am and how I interact with the world. So I'm like, you're always going to get that. And I think that has convinced a lot of people to give stuff a try.
That sounds really great. That's kind of a running theme through this podcast, I think, so far. All of my guests have said being funny and kind and interacting with other people is really one of the best ways to get them to read what you have to say.
I think that's a big part of being an author nowadays. With the rise of social media, people want to kind of know their authors and feel like they're friends with them and like them. And it helps that I like meeting people and I like talking with people. But I feel bad sometimes for authors who maybe have some severe social anxiety, like who can't do that, even on the internet, because they want to be like your pal now.
Yeah, I've encountered the same thing on my blog. A lot of people want that interaction with authors, and you kind of have to provide as part of your job. How do you manage your time between doing that and doing the actual writing portion?
About 16 different calendars. I have to write everything down or I will forget it. So I have paper calendars, I have digital calendars. I make notes about everything, and then I have to walk around my house compiling sticky notes into a big calendar. So yeah, it's tough. I'm like, okay, and I keep in mind, this is when my deadline is. This is when this is. I have to write so many words between this date and this date. And it helps that I work from home. So usually, even if home becomes too distracting because television. I can go to the library, I can get out and I can get words down, and it helps that most of the time, if my rheumatoid arthritis isn't flaring up, I can write pretty quickly. And then I have a lovely writing group who can read very quickly.
Tell me more about this writing group. Is it a bunch of other writers who give feedback on each other's work? Do they help with any of the marketing when your book is released?
Absolutely. So they're a group of writers, that live here in Austin with me. And then I have another group that's online only. But yeah, we all trade each other's work and we offer critiques. And then we also help each other keep a lookout for like typos and things. And then when any one of us releases a thing, or releases a book, or releases a story in an anthology, we all boost the signal. So we talk about it on our own feeds, we talk about it on our blogs, we tell people in person. I have a wonderful friend named David Slayton who lives in Denver, who is a sweetheart, who buys all of my books and hands them out to random people. So he's, I know a book deal is just around the corner for him. So as soon as he does, I think I'm going to buy thousands of copies of his books and just paper the town.
That's really sweet of him to do that. That's
Yeah.
really nice. That actually gives me an idea for a question that wasn't on my list. um, I'm going to turn it around a little. Instead of asking you what you do for marketing, what can readers do? I also have readers who listen to this, not just authors. What can readers do to help promote their favorite authors' books?
Tell people, recommend them. Anytime somebody says on Twitter or Facebook that they're looking for a good read, recommend an author that you know that might not get as much press as, say, somebody who's published by Tor, or something, or published by one of the big publishers, and say, hey, try this out. Or even just if you know a person who likes reading LGBTQ fiction, suggest an LGBTQ publisher, because you'd be amazed at the number of times that people have told me that they did not even know that there were publishers that only publish LGBTQ fiction.
I know, I've run into that too.
If any time that happens, and you know somebody who loves those kind of books, or who would even like those kind of books, who is just, even if they're straight and they're just open to the idea of gay characters, or they want to promote fiction with gay characters, and you can say, hey, check out Bold Strokes Books or Bella Publishing or any of the others.
Yeah, I have found that although I don't write for straight people, lots of straight people have enjoyed my books nonetheless because they're just books about people on some level. And I fully encourage them to read and enjoy and share my work, even if they're not the intended audience. And I think some
Yeah,
queer people are a little afraid of that, but I for one welcome it. It's nice to hear someone else that kind of feels the same.
yeah, definitely.
So, specifically, though, if you're trying to market your book to LGBT people, where on the internet have you found it's most easy to find them? Where do you find your audience?
Twitter has a lot of people who go to each other looking for recommendations. So Twitter is a wonderful platform. Facebook, it's a little harder to find people. They almost have to stumble across you. But Twitter has been sensational for that. Also conferences. If you have any kind of lesfic conference near your hometown or anywhere, the GCLS conference, travels around. So no matter where you live, it's probably going to be near you at some point in the future. So going there is always good. I also have a local club who's just a lesbian book club, and they're the Sapphic Reading Group, and they also put on a lesbic event every other April. So that's a wonderful place to find not only readers, but just readers, fellow authors, and just people to just nerd out with. There's the Klexicon also in Las Vegas, which is next April, which I will be at. And that is I believe it is an LGBTQ sci-fi convention.
Sort of. I mean, it's more of a fandom thing. Like, I was at ClexaCon last year. I'm really into the Clexa fandom in general. But yeah, it's basically queer people in fandom culture. So, Winona
Oh, okay.
Earp,
So beyond LGBTQ,
Clexa.
just I
Well, no,
see.
it's
Okay.
very gay woman focused. Like everyone there is pretty much
Ah,
some version of a sapphic woman. Although
okay.
everyone is welcome. There's a couple guys there last year, and they were all very nice and respectful dudes, and several of them were trans. So like, I'm glad that the community was open to letting them come. But it's all for queer women, and I highly recommend Klexicon for anyone who is interested in it. And I sold so many books there, so I'm
Ah,
excited. I'll get to see you there.
yeah, that'll be awesome. I'll be there with well, Bold Strokes is having a booth, and I'll be there with a few other authors. There used to be one in California that was BentCon, that was an LGBTQ science fiction conference, and I don't know if it's still running. When I was there, it was still very small, but that was a good time too. So it's such a welcoming community.
Awesome. So lots of people on the show have advised to go to conventions and stuff. So it's always great to hear about the new ones.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show and talk to me. It's so nice to meet a fellow speculative fiction writer and fan. I always feel like those are my people, you know?
Oh yeah, I said I love the community. It's just so welcoming and so lovely and so nice to be able to say, when people ask me what I write, to just jump right in there and be like, mostly lesbians. Especially living in Texas, is so often I have to just say I write fantasy or I write science fiction because I don't know how the person's going to react. If I say, big old lesbians, I don't know if they're going to be like, ew, or if they're going to be weird or what. And um, I heard a fellow author of mine likened it to coming out over and over and over again, having to tell people, I write gay characters, and just waiting to see how they react. So that's why I love the community so much, because you can just put it all out there.
I have experienced so much of that myself.
I
Like,
bet.
if some random person off the street asks me what I do, I say, I write science fiction and fantasy.
Right.
And it's really refreshing to be able to say, I write lesbian science fiction and
Yes.
fantasy. I write queer science fiction and fantasy,
That's
trans science fiction and fantasy.
mm-hmm.
So,
I've only had one bad reaction when I was pressed at a small writing gathering that I found on Meetup. I was pressed only one time. What kind of fantasy? They're women and they're lesbians, and most of the people there just sort of nodded and went, oh. And there was just one person who was like, lesbians? You mean two women? And I was like, yeah, two women, she said. And I was like, yeah. She just kept repeating it. And I was like, yes, two women in love. She just, kind of turned up her nose at me. And like she was saying, Lordy Lord, it's the gay agenda come to life.
spreading our dirty lesbian sci-fi everywhere.
Yes, I'm just spreading my lesbian agenda through the power of science fiction. So
It's so important to put queer women in science fiction, though, because how are we supposed to have a future as a community if we can't envision it, you know?
I know, and it's why I put it in my books that no one has to be like, yes, I am a lesbian, because everyone assumes everyone is straight. It's like, no, when people say, who are you dating? And you say, I'm dating another woman, or I'm dating a woman, they don't give a crap. They're just like, whatever, oh, okay, because everyone's just assumed to just do whatever they want. So no one ever has to explain it. No one ever has to come out.
That's so refreshing. I wish that especially straight authors who are trying to include gay characters in their narratives would do that and just not make it about them being queer. It's a happenstance. It's just a side note.
Right. There are a few who've done that just have a character, who's a guy, mention their boyfriend or something, and then people just be like, oh, and just have it pass like that. And straight people seem to be a little more accepting of it when it just goes like that and then flows out. But it makes gay people so happy because they're like, yes, someone more like me. Yeah, nobody care. They kiss their girlfriend and that's it. They're done.
Yes, they kiss their girlfriend and that's it. That's how I like to
Nobody
end all my stories.
Nobody cares. She kissed her girlfriend and nobody cared. The end.
Wow, this has been a great conversation. I was going to end it and then it just kept going and I love it. Okay. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation. I will add links to all of your work and your website and all that great stuff.
Oh, thank you very much. It was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
This has been For Love and Money with the Lesbian Talk Show. And today we interviewed Barbara Ann Wright, an author of lesbian science fiction and fantasy. If you'd like to discuss this podcast, please check out our Facebook page. The Lesbian Talk Show Facebook group always wants to hear your comments. And if you'd like, please check out our Patreon page as well, where you can support the Lesbian Talk Show's podcasts and hear exclusive clips that you can't find anywhere else. Have a great day, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.